Welcome to the very first Swingfactor podcast. My name is Max Colley III, and I'm so happy that you have chosen to join me. This isn't really going to be a traditional podcast because I'm kind of gearing it towards the people that I kind of already know, and I'm not really putting it out on the platforms traditionally that you would get thousands of likes and subscribers. So I guess it would be better called a enhanced vlog. I learned that term from my late wife, Talia, who was constantly vlogging, even though she never really released any of her videos. Also, I really hate being the center of attention, but I'm doing this because it's going to allow me to shine the light on things that I'm interested in and people that I love. And so I'm excited about that. And that's kind of my mindset was what this is. Very grassroots, very organic, very low key. I'm still trying to figure out all of this stuff, but if I keep doing it, which hopefully I will, it'll get more polished and professional, trying to figure out, especially the technical side of these things to make it look cool and add stuff. But for now, it is what it is. So, and this all kind of came out of COVID, really. I was working at Michigan State University and everything was virtual, shut down. And we have a jazz festival that we've run for many, many years. And that got shut down. And but we still went virtual with it. And one of the things that we did was the guest artists that we were supposed to have, I did 3 interviews with. And they all just happened to be heroes of mine and also friends of mine. So it was a lot of fun. And I did it instead of reading their biography to everybody. I kind of did a video of biography, and that was a lot of fun. Went over big, and we had a good time with that. So after all was said and done, it was pretty well received with the interviews and stuff, and I got a lot of comments. And they said, you should start your own podcast. And main one being Talia. So part of this is to, because I really don't like to be on camera and, and stuff, but part of the incentive is just to kind of honor her. And one thing she kind of thought it would be fun. And I had other people tell me the same thing. And so, and I get to spotlight really cool people in my life. So I'm treating this like a little bit of a TV show where I'm going to have some interviews with people and each time, and then a couple of segments of things that are important to me. Of course, God and music. So one segment I'm going to have is like a Bible verse of the day that's been impactful to me, and hopefully you'll be able to find some inspiration from. And then I'm also going to have an album of the day, which for now is just going to be spotlighting my new upcoming release. But I'm really excited to just show different albums from growing up and that I have loved and that are my favorites. And it's like the desert island picks. What albums would you take with you? So it'll be that kind of a thing. But for the first few ones, I'm excited to showcase my project, mainly because I get to showcase some of the fun people that have helped me with this new project coming out. And we'll talk more about that in the future. So we'll have those kind of segments. I got other ideas too of some fun things. As you can see, I'm in the Louis Armstrong corner, and I was thinking about having a Louis Armstrong moment or a Louis Armstrong album or something about Louis Armstrong. So we'll get to all that kind of stuff. Speaking of Louis Armstrong, the theme song to the podcast I chose from my second CD entitled Jubilee, which is the title track from that album. And it's written by Hoagy Carmichael and was made famous by none other than Mr. Louis Armstrong, or Pops, or Satchmo. And then for the soundtrack, I accompanied it with some videos of some of my favorite concerts and the performances I've had over the years. As I get more proficient with the technology, it'll be a little bit more seamless. I'll redo that so it's not quite so janky. But anyways, that's where that comes from. So I'd like to go to the first segment of the podcast, and this is my verse of the day. And this is hard because just like the albums also, there's so many I want to choose from. But what I ended up choosing, and I'm looking at my notes here, Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6 is from the New International Version. But it's trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And in all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. So another version of the Bible that I like is called The Message, and it's a little bit more modern day language. It puts those verses as trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do and everywhere you go. He's the one that will keep you on track. Don't assume you know everything. So this verse has been challenging to me for many reasons, because if you're like me, you like to be in control and in charge. You want to know what's happening and all that stuff. So letting go is a hard thing to do at first until you gain trust. But as I continue to pursue my relationship with God and not just learn about God, but really know Him and really find Him to be faithful and trustworthy, this slowly becomes more of a way of life and a lot more easy. It's really like any other relationship. The more time you spend with somebody, the more you're able to trust them. On my new release, I have a snippet of a tune by Twyla Paris called Do I Trust You? And I challenge you all to check it out. I'm going to try to put the link right here beneath me. But it's a question I've had to wrestle with. And as a Christ follower, of course, you're going to say, yeah, I trust God. But so many of my actions demonstrate you really don't. So this is an encouraging song, and it reminded me to go back to Job in the Bible, who all the terrible things happened to, and God's response when he was kind of asking, I don't know if you asked why, but he was kind of questioning God, and God's like, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" And the song kind of states a similar thing, is like, does the river flow? Does the north wind blow? And that kind of stuff. So it was a good challenging song. I'm glad I was able to just put a little, these snippets are like 30 seconds long on the CD, but that's what that song's about. So one of my main goals in these days that I have left on this earth is to declare that God is good and He's loving. And don't look at circumstances. Do not define your life by circumstances, but look at Him. He paid the ultimate price to demonstrate His love for us. So I hope that all of that will encourage you. Moving on to the next segment, I normally would have an album of the day, but for these first ones, like I said, it's more of a vehicle to profile my new release and kind of break down some of the tunes and talk about some of the stories and really bring some of these amazing musicians to some interviews and introduce you to them. So I'm a musician. So one of the things that I wanted to do to honor Talia was to do a CD and a project that kind of told our story. It's very programmatic, meaning it's not like a typical CD where I would try to balance, slow songs to fast songs and not have all the same keys and all that kind of stuff on the album. But this is programmatic, so it tells a story, and it really is our journey through this time and season that we had with the cancer. And so there's a call to the album, the song that represents that, and then there's the songs that reflect when times were good, and then finding out that she had the cancer, contending for the healing, going through the grieving process, and then the healing process, and then trying to move forward. And there's songs in each of those that hopefully tell that story. And by no means do you ever really arrive. Anybody that's suffered loss kind of knows that but I've had enough to go through each of those different sections, and we'll continue to work through that. So I get to feature people on the podcast that had a part in this project, and I'm really excited about that because I get to spotlight them. They're incredible talent, but really what amazing, compassionate, and beautiful people they are. Such blessings to me. So the very first interview that I've done for the podcast is with somebody that I've known probably the least amount of time of all the people on the project, but God has used him and his wife in my life during this season. Peter Jonatan is a composer and educator from Indonesia, which by chance I had the opportunity to travel with a jazz trio last year, and so it was a pleasure to get to know Peter. And he teaches at the New England Conservatory of Music and the Berklee College of Music, two of the most prestigious music schools in the United States. And I'm not going to say too much more in the introduction because I'll let the interviews tell the rest of the story. At the end of the interview, there's going to be a video, and I will end the podcast with that video. The video we're actually talking about in the interview is the first studio video, which has already been released. Things took a little bit longer than I had thought, so we released that. That was the intention of this podcast, but they were gracious enough to really do another video, which was really it is Peter's composition and the title track to my project "Till I See You," which is a tribute to Talia. And so this video kind of like takes her obituary and puts pictures to it and stuff. I really didn't, other than sending some of the pictures, They did an amazing job. And so it was such a beautiful tribute, and can't thank them enough. To Peter and Bernice, Peter's wife, really helped a lot with the video too. So just thank them so much. So thanks for checking this podcast out, and I'll have some more fun interviews coming up associated with the project release in the near future. So for all information, you can go to my website. I'll try to put it right here, www.maxcolley3.com, the number 3.com, and you'll be able to exclusively get my CDs and LPs and downloads there. Everything's going to be very low key, and I'm doing nothing with this project, very standard to make it easier for all of you. But it's going to work for me on this way. So thank you. Love, blessings, and swing. So I'm here with composer and arranger, orchestrator, conductor, educator, pianist, husband, father, my brother in Christ, Mr. Peter Jonatan, and welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Oh yeah, nice to meet you, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Honored.
Yeah.
So if we were going to unpack all of those titles, it would take hours and hours for all of those hats that you wear. But I do want to get a little bit into your story and your background before we get to the beautiful composition that touched my life so much. So first, could you talk about growing up in Jakarta, Indonesia, which I had the pleasure of touring with a jazz trio back in March, and I had such a wonderful experience with the people and the places, and jazz is doing well over there. This beautiful school that we went to and everything. But could we talk a little bit about what your life was like and maybe how you got into music in Jakarta?
Yeah, so I've been studying music for a long time, actually, since 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's pretty much like part of my life now. At the beginning, I actually the thing is that my family is not a musician, so
Okay.
so yeah, it's quite common where their family or their parents is musician, and they actually have their child uh, studying music, but it's usually not the case. It's actually not the case for me. And my this is the story that my parents told me that when I went to I think that's it. That's kindergarten. Some sort of like, yeah. In kindergarten there is like a demonstration. There was a demonstration of like a keyboard from, I think it's from Yamaha probably. It's like a music
Okay.
school. Like they are demonstrating a music kinds of like thing, and then suddenly so again, this is my parents that told me. Suddenly they said that I came to them and then asked to study music because I saw that demonstration of keyboard. And
Sure.
then from that point on, then my parents said, "Oh yeah, let's join that join that Yamaha, because that's the one that is actually closest to my home." And then yeah, that's when my musical journey actually starts. So yeah, it went for quite some time, and of course, at the beginning, it's not all classical, right? Yamaha usually they are not classical. It's more like giving foundations to just have fun for a child, so that
Okay.
yeah, they love music. But the thing is that, I mean, that's when I actually developed my ear. So that's the first like exposure with music, and that actually changed my life, because that's giving me sort of like a good ear, and that continues until now. That's why I'm like working as an ear trainer and ear training professor.
Exactly. Wow. Well, I know that fast forwarding, despite that you always loved music, you actually pursued engineering and went and got a degree in engineering.
Mhm.
But as your biography says, that you chose to follow your heart and then pursued music.
I, so that is always my mindset, right? If I already, and I say that also to my parents, if I want to pursue this field, which I know it's not easy, I have to be the best that I could be, meaning that I have to work hard and then try to enroll in the highest or the best education that's possible, and also work hard to be able to be the best in that particular field. I mean, there are lots of like great musicians, I know, but really, I just need to work hard so that I'm able to reach that level. And it is at the beginning, it's very tough because some of the musicians, especially in US, like they have been exposed to the music since very young age, and then they have a very good sort of like education system. Probably not in Indonesia at that time. Now it's very different. Lots of people that are very qualified, like musicians that can teach
Hmm.
there. But at that time, at my time, it's not as much. So
Sure.
uh, yeah, I've already sort of like left behind from the beginning, and I have to play catch up, right? And
Right.
that makes me have to work like twice as hard at the beginning.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
but I mean, yeah, since I love it, then yeah, I would. I'm
Motivation.
actually willing to put that effort.
Exactly. Exactly. So, so it takes a lot of courage to just go into the field of music, but then it took a lot of courage for you to actually decide to move to a completely different country. And there's a lot of, I'm sure, pros and cons, but you ended up moving to the United States. And was it because you had a scholarship to the Berklee College of Music? Is that how you got here?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
that is, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And so you had gotten to a point to where you were proficient enough to get into Berkeley. Talk to me just a little bit about that decision and maybe some fears you had. I mean, was there a language barrier, or were you already pretty proficient in English over in Indonesia and stuff, and culturally and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so because I've taken engineering before in Singapore, right? It's not in Indonesia,
Oh,
so
okay,
at least I mean, yeah, the primary language in the in that education in the university is already English. So I have some experience with teaching or with instruction in English. So that is when I move here, it's probably the least concern that I have the language.
okay,
It's more of the like the musical proficiency. I think that's
okay,
probably the one. I mean, I know that I have some experience with like composing and all of those stuff, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect in terms of the level of like education, like musical education. I'm expecting that it's actually going to be pretty high from the beginning, and that's the one that I'm actually concerned. So I tried to like equip myself a little bit before I enrolled here, like taking some courses with somebody that's actually my teacher there, Aminoto Kosin, which is actually a Berkeley alumni. So at least I have some sort of like a clue because he
sure,
knows the curriculum, right? So he can, yeah, taught me how it how is it like, what to expect, and things like that. So it's not as big of a surprise. Now you mentioned, yeah, funny, you mentioned about the cultural thing. It is actually quite an adjustment at the beginning, but really, I mean, when I moved to Singapore, even though it's like 1 hour from Indonesia, there's
right,
already an adjustment, and
okay,
I'm somebody that is that actually it's very difficult to make an adjustment. I know that from the
okay,
beginning. Yeah, when I moved to Singapore to pursue my undergraduate education, it is actually very tough to make that adjustment. But at least it gives me some experience. So when
sure,
I'm moving to US, I know that it's going to be adjustment to be made. So I kind of like know what to expect, like those adjustment, and it prepares me a little bit. So
okay,
it's not a total surprise.
sure, sure, okay. Um, so I'm going to move a little bit to the discussion to your role as a composer. The first thing I notice about your compositions is that you're pretty eclectic. You're not being really reduced to one type of a genre, and you have a lot of different influences and ways that you compose. Could you talk a little bit about any influences you might have had in music, who you like to listen to, or that you listened to a lot growing up, and then as a composer, if there were people that influenced your compositional style?
Yeah, this is always sort of like difficult kinds of like question usually. And again, yeah, I mean, it is quite a common question to usually to be asked, especially if for somebody that as you mentioned, displays some sort of like yeah, eclectic kinds of like
Mhm.
musical style. And uh, and I tend to like create composition in different kinds of style. So
Hmm.
it sort of like tells me a little bit of my background and the music that I like to listen from the beginning. It's actually there's actually a lot of different types of music, but the first I would say that the basis is it's usually go back to the it's going back to hymns, right? The church hymns, because that is the environment where I grew up. So that is usually the basis, and uh, later on I study jazz and all of those stuff. But really, that should be the root, and it should be pretty clear that is where I grew up with, and it's sort of sort of like the foundation of all of my music. Even though I delve into different types of style, but it still has that types of like hymns, like kinds of like uh, uh, texture as some sort of like the foundation of what all my composition, and then from there, now it goes to lots of like different styles. Jazz definitely, because that is what I actually studied for a very long time, right? My bachelor, my master, and even my doctorate, it's all in jazz composition. So I study a
Correct.
lot jazz, and that is primarily why I pursue education in the United States, because United States is famous for jazz, right? So,
Sure.
and yeah, it's the foundation even for jazz. So that's why I pursue that. But before that, I studied classical before, so that gave me some influence. And I mean, I always liked films, right? Film scoring and
Okay.
those kinds of like stuff.
Hmm.
No, yeah, gospel is associated with hymns, right? And so
Right.
that is why that is sort of like things that I always interested from the beginning. And when I'm studying jazz, I love to listen to different types of like jazz fused in different style. Like for example, like fused with Latin, with Brazilian music. So those kinds of stuff also have some influence with me. And also, lastly, video games. I'm a video game. I
Okay.
like to play video games a lot. That's why, and I
Okay.
know there are lots of like video game music that is pretty good. And nowadays it is actually booming, right? Those in video game industry is almost as big as films, even.
Sure.
So, and there are lots of like great video game score, and yeah, that sort of like shaped me as a composer. So if you ask me who I like to listen, there are lots of them depending on the field, right? So with jazz, uh, I always mention these sets of composer. Klaus Ogerman, that's definitely one of the composer that I hear, uh, and then Vince Mendoza, um, Billy Childs, Alan Broadbent, and then uh, who is that? Maria Snyder. So yeah, those are usually the composers that I always like mention.
Okay.
Then with video game, normally it's the Japanese composers, Japanese video game composer, because I like to play usually specific types of uh, types of games, and that is like like Japanese RPG, because they have like I found that they usually have the sort of like the best kinds of like soundtrack that really fits my kinds of like my style. There are lots of like
Okay.
different types of video game. I'm not listening to all of the different genres, but yeah, and also in films like John Williams. I mean, I definitely like hear a lot of like his music.
Sure.
Uh, that's probably pretty much it. And lots of like different kinds of
Sure.
composers.
Yeah, and I can hear all of that. Um, so now kind of migrating to specifically your composition "Till I See You." Kind of the way that I stumbled upon it was I was looking on YouTube for arrangements actually on a hymn of arrangements on "Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus." And as a side note, I would encourage you all to check out Peter's YouTube channel, which showcases all of his beautiful compositions. And so, I loved everything I was hearing and
Yeah.
went down the rabbit hole as we do on YouTube, just getting lost and let me just watch this video, let me watch this one. And I found the "Till I See You," but the circumstances surrounding my wife's situation really hadn't materialized yet. So once my wife passed and I decided to do a musical tribute, I was kind of looking for inspiration, even though I knew I kind of had some stuff. And I ended up on your page again. I mean, I wasn't specifically looking for that particular tune. And then the title jumped out at me. I was like, well, let me listen to that. I knew I had heard it before and it was really beautiful, but it would kind of stay there. I didn't think I was going to use it or anything. And so then I saw that title and then I listened to it and I was just left in a flood of tears. I was just bawling. And it actually took me numerous times to listen through it without just drowning in my tears and it was I could see the journey of my wife and me, and really they're not sad tears. The biggest thing about this tune for me is that they bring their tears of hope and joy, really. This tune, even though it's solemn at the beginning and stuff, by the time we get to the end of it, it's you know
Mm.
and I basically could just see me running into my wife's arms in heaven.
Mhm.
And the verse that it reminds me of in the Bible is 1 Thessalonians 4:17, with we who are still alive will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And that's exactly the way that I hear this tune. So getting back to the sequence of where we are today with this song is, I found you on social media after I listened to it. And I sent you a message kind of describing what I was doing, and I asked you if you had a lead sheet. And for those listening that don't know what a lead sheet is, it's a piece of music that basically has the melody on it with the chords that we would play, and it allows us to do what we would want with it. But you didn't really compose it in that way, so you told me that you didn't really have a lead sheet. But what would you think, and you proposed this to me, if you arranged the tune more in a jazz setting? Because the tune, as you described in its original arrangement, which we'll talk about in a minute, was pretty cinematic, for lack of a better term. Um, and you would make it for a jazz quartet with strings, kind of like in the style of what you just said. An influence was Klaus Ogerman.
Mhm.
I heard when you said that, like Wynton Marsalis, who's one of my major influences, going back to his third album, Hot House Flowers, that he recorded with a string orchestra.
Mm.
And I was kind of like, well, yeah, of course, I would love that. It'd be a dream, but I don't know how my budget's going to commission a whole new arrangement and strings and all that kind of stuff. But from day one, you've been gracious to work with me, and whatever you want, because you really wanted to be a part of this project. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. Um, but another God moment of the song was uh, trying to figure out how to get one of my dear friends, Riza Printup, on the CD, who's the wife of Marcus Printup, who's one of my dearest brothers, and they're both been such an influence in my life. And I was trying to figure it out. And then right before you started writing the new arrangement, you wrote me and says, "How do you feel about having harp on this?" And I'm like, oh my goodness. Yes, and thank you for that answered prayer, Lord. So there's been so many what I'm calling God winks in this whole thing, finding you joining on board. And I feel like this tune, when I think about it in hindsight from all of this, like it's one of these God things where before any of us knew it, he had it in mind for me to find this tune before anything happened with my wife or anything. You wrote it before any of this happened, and it just is spoken, and it has brought so much healing. And so um, I know that it wasn't programmatic necessarily from its inception, but and then I also know that your wife kind of came up with the title of it. Also, maybe we can even discuss that a little bit. But it describes exactly what I was talking about. So if you could talk to me about the composition first, and then we'll move to this particular arrangement. You originally wrote it for piano and orchestra, and again, with composers, it's always, do you hear melodies first? Do you hear harmonies first? What was your thinking, and how did this tune come about in its original form?
Yeah, so I'm actually trying to think
Yeah.
what's the process. I mean, it's always different. I do tend to work usually with the piano, so
Okay.
I've always like play around, and more often than not, I actually came with a melody. That's
Okay.
usually, yeah, that's usually, I think, that's also the case for this particular piece. So I have some melody, and yeah, it's kind of like difficult to actually say whether it actually just single melody. It's actually not, because when I play it, I often always immediately accompany, right? So it's not just
Right.
like da, 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 and then try to figure out the chord. So it's just like came naturally. That's usually how I compose. Just like immediately I know this melody, and then I fit certain sets of chord inside it. And uh, I remember at that time, it is in the period of time. It's usually during the summer, where I usually uh, try to kinds of like make sort of like a habit of try to compose every few days, right? Just like
Sure.
writing some sketch, and I still have lots of like those like stack of like sketch that I never release. Actually, it's just like
Sure.
sketch, like give, yeah, just like for training, like for practicing like composition. Because
Hmm.
as a composer, that's usually what you want to do, right? To try to like yeah, so that anytime you have some ideas, you try to like write it down, try to like it's more like a kind of like practice, but also there are a couple of lots of like good ideas that usually came from it. And it turns out that some of the piece that I wrote at that period, I'm actually like trying can release it as like a full product, and this is one of them. So I always have I have composed this, and then I remember I always loved this in particular in terms of the melody,
Hmm.
and at that time, it's not finished, so I only have the A section actually. This one, it has the B section, right? So I only have A section, and at that time, remember when at 7 years ago, when the story where it's actually released the piece. So my friend at that time actually came to me and said, "Okay, we are gonna record." Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus, the
Oh,
video. So this is actually recorded at the same
oh,
session with that.
okay. All
Right.
right.
So yeah, he said, "Can you do the can we record Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus?" And then yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, he already know the piece, and then I've already finished with all the arrangement. But then he said, "Oh, the session of the recording, it's still like it has like I don't know, like 4 hours or something like that." So yeah, when we record the Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus, probably it's gonna take only 2 hours. So we still have like some time. So
Okay.
do you have another piece? And
Oh,
then
wow.
I said, oh, okay. Let me think. I mean, because I think, oh, this is a good opportunity. Let's try to like, yeah, try to have something else probably. I mean, since the group is already there, so you might as well like,
Sure.
yeah, try to like I just like came like try to like go to all those stacks of like sketches and then see, just flip through, oh, this piece sounds like it might be a good thing, but it is not finished. So I actually finished the orchestration within, I don't know, like 4 5 days, I think 4 days.
Uh,
But yeah, and then I think that at that time, oh, I need to like add the B section at least, because it's not complete at that time. So then at that time I tried to add the B section, but I already have the A section, so I just derived the B section actually from the A section,
okay.
and that is when the piece came about. And there's no title at the beginning. I mean, I just like compose. I mean, that's what I feel, and then there's all of
Sure.
those things. And then I asked my wife to actually uh, like show it to my wife, and then let her hear it, and then ask, what do you think? What would be the best title? Because she always have usually have a very great suggestion of like giving a title that
Sure.
yes, it's like, I mean, she usually have a great sense of like what types of thing that this piece actually refers to, or what types of things that it reminds her of. And then she said, "Oh yeah, how about this? Still I see you."
Oh,
Yeah, I think because she said that, yeah, it sort of like it feels that it kinds of like showcase, or sort of like refers to the feeling of like a separation, and but then at the end feels of like meeting again. That's, I
right.
remember that's what she said.
Wow.
So I said, "Oh yeah, sure." Let's put, because I usually not good with title, and
Okay.
oh yeah, so then yeah, it's a good call, I mean, from
Well,
her.
perfect. Perfect. I think it was meant to be. So, um, so we talked a little bit about originally it sounds cinematic kind of in its inception. And so when you said that you were going to adapt it for me from its original, and you sent it back to me, I just I couldn't believe it. It was so perfect. And I was so in love with it immediately. And there were things that, of course, made me smile, just different nuances and little changes and things. Without getting too technical, because most people won't understand, was most of the way that you adapted it. Obviously, the melody stays in intact. So was it mostly scoring and harmonic different ways that you adapted it to make it more of a jazz feel?
Yeah. And I mean, kinds of like, yeah, looks like an easy question, but really, I mean, I'm like trying to think on how to explain that in like a short amount of time, and maybe
Exactly.
the language that is not too
Right.
technical, right?
Right.
So I no, no, I remember like before when you reach out to me, actually I already thinking that before I even email back to you. I already think that,
Uh,
oh, this is might be a good opportunity to actually try to offer what I'm offering at that time, right? So how
or
about setting this for a jazz quartet with strings? Because I mean, I've listened to your stuff before, right? I mean, try to like do a sort of research to hear what types of like music that you have created before, your previous CDs and things like that. In your
or
website, what types of things that play sort of like big band kinds of like stuff. So I know immediately. I think that it might work with sort of like a different tweak, right? And that is more geared towards what your musical style, because uh, I mean, I'm actually at the beginning, and in my musical career, I'm more of a arranger than a composer. So that's why, even
okay,
though when I came to Berkeley, there is no like arranging major, right? You
right.
have like composition major, but really that's when at first when I really fell in love with the world of like composition is from arranging. I like to arrange different stuff. Saying I've said that before with hymns, right? I mean, the piece is already there, so I just need to arrange it
Sure,
differently,
sure.
and that is why I love arranging so much, because even from the same piece, I feel that I can generate different types of things, right? And
Mhm.
I can always adapt those into different kinds of setting, and that's what I immediately think of when facing with this opportunity. And I'm thinking of, oh, this piece somehow I think it's gonna work with jazz setting. So I'm trying to play around with it. I've asked like few questions from you. Remember that? Okay,
Mhm.
what instrumentation? How about the harp at the beginning? So I'm trying to like think of how I can create the form that still makes sense, because the original doesn't have any intro, doesn't have any. It is actually for orchestra. The orchestra plays a bigger role, and there is no soloist, right? It is more of like composed for orchestra, so the melody it's been tossed around from one instrument to the other. Now there is a piano section at the beginning,
Right.
so I'm thinking that maybe this piano section can be then replaced by you to play trumpet, because I want to definitely feature you, not the piano. I want to feature you as the soloist. But then at the beginning, it's sort of like if I accompany with piano, it's kinds of like uh, maybe I would say at that time my thinking is that a little bit too mainstream. So how about like featuring harp? So, yeah, that's why I mentioned maybe, because I no I always love harp, and I think this setting, this intimate setting at the beginning. I mean, featuring.
Right.
You tell me about that story is the tribute, and then I'm thinking, oh, maybe the beginning. I'm trying to like evoke that kind of feeling of like remembering. So starting something very simple, something very intimate, but then as the piece progresses, it grows towards something that is much bigger. So
Right.
that's what I'm actually thinking, and it's all in the setting of jazz. I mean, I mentioned Klaus Ogerman often does things like that with strings, like jazz kinds of setting. You mentioned Wynton Marsalis with the Hot House Flower. I definitely know that piece before, with like other uh, 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 other like jazz giants like Charlie Parker have that types of like
Clifford
album.
Brown and yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Clifford Brown also that types of album with strings as accompaniment. So I know that this is definitely something that can be done. I just need to figure out what sort of like form that makes sense. So I adapted a little bit from the original. Uh, it actually takes me quite some time. So I mentioned I've mentioned the original take me like, I don't know, like 5 days. This is also probably another 5 days probably. So it is not that easy. I mean, still like to think, try to tweak different stuff. I know that I want to incorporate some solo in the middle, because I feel that, yeah, it is kind of like within the tradition, and I like to feature you also as a soloist, so that have some chance to sort of like speak your language as well, and to sort of like complement the composition.
Sure. Beautiful. Well, it was amazing. So lastly, you know, in this modern day and age, videos are now a thing that accompany the musical side of things. And so you and your beautiful wife Bernice have been putting together a video of the live session. I guess something that I haven't mentioned about how we recorded this with all the different entities. You know, there was the jazz quartet that we recorded in Lansing, and I actually recorded that and then came back and redid my solo over that, so I didn't waste their time if I didn't like what I was playing and stuff. And then I sent it all to you. You got everything ready, and maybe you can talk about a little bit about this too. But you've had your experience with the Budapest Scoring Orchestra, and we did this over a Zoom, and I was just incredible. It was very surreal to hear myself being played in Budapest. You know, it was fun to watch you, and we talked a little bit too about, you know, you, despite that it's your composition, you know, it intimately you created, it was still interesting, like a baby of yours, to hear it come to fruition in there, and maybe talk about that process of what you needed to do with the Budapest Scoring Orchestra. But then after we did that, then we finally added Riza on harp, and we videoed all of the sessions, and your lovely wife put all of that together, and so you could talk about her background in that too, and how she does things. And so yeah, talk to me about the video.
So my wife has lots of experience actually dealing with these types of project before. I mean, all the project that you've watched on YouTube, the even the original Till I See You and all of those, it's all her production. So it kinds of like she knows how to combine those. And again, with video, with the challenge of this being a project that is recorded on different places with different video recorder and all of those
Mhm.
stuff. Challenge is going to be to make sure that everything sync together in terms of color and all of those. That is the most difficult part. She has lots of experience with this, so that she kind of like know what usually I want, right?
Sure.
And of course she have a background in film scoring as well. That
Right.
certainly helps, right? And during her film scoring study, she actually likes to do lots of video editing, right? So she likes to do an editing of audio and video, so audio to match the audio with different scene. So she have experience of all of those before, and she actually loves doing that. That's why she and plus, I mean, she works with me a lot with all the other different projects. So yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, the only thing is that, yeah, it's tough to find the time, like with kids and all of
Exactly.
those things. But yeah, that's
Exactly.
the only thing. And after once, yeah, we figure out that, then yeah, I mean, it's the one that you just see the product. Yeah, I hope you like it, but it's
Love it. I absolutely love it. And I do have to say too, you guys are so gracious in that you're actually, this is going to be one of two videos, and I won't spill too much about the second one, but there is another one coming that will be a little bit more geared towards the project as the full project is going to be released. So I'm deeply indebted to you for both of these videos and just the amount of time and everything that went into those. So that's about all the stuff that I had for you on the podcast. So I want to thank you for a million things, but just taking the time from your busy schedule to do this interview for the podcast, but more your love and support through this has really brought a lot of healing to me. And every time I think about you or look at you, I almost start crying because you mean so much to me, and the gift that you've given me. And what I really hope is that, yeah, you have given me the hope that the Bible speaks of through music. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, and God's gift of music and how it can help us heal. And it's such an amazing gift. And I hope that it brings comfort to others that have suffered loss, and they can feel that same kind of hope that I feel when I hear this tune that you created. But I hope that you feel in some way a little bit of gratitude because of your involvement in this project. I was honored to meet you this summer and your beautiful family. We took the time out to go in a driving rainstorm out to dinner. It was a long day. You had just gotten home from a vacation, but you still made the time. And I loved hanging with your two little ones for a brief period of time, and meeting your wife and all of you. And I'm just eternally grateful to God for crossing our paths and for your composition, but most of all, your generosity and love that you've shown. And I hope in addition to that, a lot more people will hear your music, and that you will be blessed many times over in any ways. And I hope it brings business to you and everything. So I love you, and God bless your family and your family many times over. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Max. I mean, this is actually it's a great opportunity. I've mentioned from the beginning. Also, I'm incredibly also honored that you asked me to to incorporate my piece with your in your album, and we just and hearing all the stories. I mean, it's always something that when people feel something and they are deeply moved when listening to my music, I am just incredibly honored, and yeah, couldn't thank God more of like the opportunity that He actually gave for us to cross path, and also for me to be able to actually contribute something in this project and also in your life.
Well, praise God, and thank you again. Much love to you.